Get your manager, he barked, the words landing like a slap. I saw red. Competent. I'd swallowed 1,000 insults chasing a pipe dream. Now this. But here's the thing they didn't know about Maya Kowalski. Underneath the stained apron and tired smile was a textile designer with claws. Parsons was her lifeline, and he was casually crushing it. So I did what any self-respecting artist backed into a corner would do. I quit. Right then, in front of everyone, and handed him his check. What he didn't realize, that dismissal lit a fuse. He thought he was ending my career. He had no idea he was about to fund it. Get your manager, he barked, the words landing like a slap. I saw red. Competent. I'd swallowed 1,000 insults chasing a pipe dream. Now this. But here's the thing they didn't know about Maya Kowalski. Underneath the stained apron and tired smile was a textile designer with claws. Parsons was her lifeline, and he was casually crushing it. So I did what any self-respecting artist backed into a corner would do. I quit. Right then, in front of everyone, and handed him his check. What he didn't realize? That dismissal lit a fuse. He thought he was ending my career. He had no idea he was about to fund it. The Tuesday night air inside Trattoria del Valente vibrated with a particular brand of Upper East Side privilege. Not just the aroma of white truffle oil clinging to the air, or the clinking of crystal against teeth, but a palpable hum of self-importance. For Maya, it was just the soundtrack to her exhaustion. At 24, she navigated the treacherous terrain of entitled diners with the weary grace of a seasoned soldier. Her reality was a constant juggling act. Rent for a shoebox apartment in Astoria, dodging predatory landlords, and stretching a dwindling bank account she'd affectionately, and now ironically, dubbed Parsons Fund. That fund was a beacon, a shimmering promise of the life she yearned for. In her mind, she wasn't Maya the waitress, perpetually wiping spilled wine and fielding ludicrous demands. She was Maya Kowalski, the textile designer, her hands stained with charcoal and dye, not bleach and lemon. Her sketchbook, a tattered leather-bound volume hidden in her locker, was her sanctuary. Within its pages, the city transformed. The jagged skyline became a series of bold geometric patterns. The tangled chaos of the subway map morphed into intricate, mesmerizing designs. Even a crumpled leaf from Central Park revealed a hidden network of delicate veins, ripe for interpretation. Tonight, the restaurant pulsed with a manic energy. Every table was occupied, the air thick with a demanding impatience Maya knew all too well. She moved through the packed dining room, her smile a carefully constructed shield against the throbbing ache in her feet and the quiet desperation gnawing at her insides. A double shift, her second this week, loomed large. Each extra $100 tip was another step toward freedom, but tonight the finish line felt impossibly distant. Then they arrived, table 7. The man was striking, almost brutally so, a sharp jawline, eyes the color of a storm-tossed sea, in a suit that whispered of Savile Row tailoring, a glint of steel from his impeccable Patek Philippe watch. He radiated a force field of money and impatience. The woman clinging to his arm was his antithesis, all sharp angles and glacial blonde hair. Her crimson dress screamed for attention in the restaurant's muted palette, and she dripped disdain like a leaking faucet. From the moment they were seated, Maya knew they were trouble. He didn't acknowledge her presence, not even a fleeting glance. He simply snapped his fingers, the sound echoing in the otherwise hushed atmosphere. "Wine list," he commanded, his voice a low growl aimed at the pristine white tablecloth. Maya's smile tightened, a practiced maneuver honed over years of customer service combat. "Of course, sir. And can I get you started with some water for the table?" He finally looked up, his gaze sweeping over her black apron with a dismissive flick that stripped her of her humanity, reducing her to a mere fixture in his opulent surroundings. "Just the wine list. Now." Veronica Lancaster, the woman, adjusted her lipstick in a compact mirror, a smug smile playing on her lips. "He's had a trying day, darling," she purred, not to Maya, but to her own reflection and perhaps to the man's. "The LVMH deal is being difficult." The man whose name Maya would soon learn was Harrison Davenport. Merely grunted in response. Retrieving the heavy, leather-bound wine list felt like lugging a small boulder. He snatched it from her hand without a word, flipping through the pages with an exaggerated air of boredom. "Bring the Aero 5 Sassicaia," he said, closing the book with a snap and tossing it onto the table. The force sent it sliding, colliding with a water glass. Ice water cascaded over the rim, drenching Veronica's lap. She shrieked, leaping to her feet. "Oh, you clumsy oaf!" she hissed, glaring at Maya as if she'd personally conjured the watery disaster. "My sincerest apologies, madam," Maya said, her voice even despite the knot tightening in her stomach. She grabbed a stack of fresh napkins. "Let me help you." "Don't touch me," Veronica snapped, swatting her hand away with a venomous glare. Harrison Davenport released an exasperated sigh, his anger a palpable force. "For God's sake, can't you do anything right?" he snarled at Maya. "Now my guest is soaked. Get your manager. Get someone competent." The word competent was a match striking a tinderbox. Competent was memorizing the wine list, from vintage to varietal. Competent was anticipating needs before they were voiced. Competent was enduring endless microaggressions with a smile plastered on her face, all for the sake of the dwindling Parsons Fund. Robert, her perpetually frazzled manager, materialized at the table, his face a mask of frantic apology. He comped their appetizers, promised the wine was on the house, groveling in a way that made Maya's stomach churn. Harrison Davenport barely registered his presence, his attention already fixed on his phone, thumbs flying across the screen with furious energy. Maya was instructed to continue serving the table, a directive that felt less like a job and more like a form of punishment. Every interaction dripped with contempt. When she poured the ridiculously expensive Sassicaia, he watched her like a hawk, as if anticipating a deliberate spill. When she delivered their Chateaubriand, he complained that it was 2 degrees past his requested medium rare, a claim she knew was patently false because she had personally witnessed the chef temping it. Through it all, Maya clung to her composure, retreating into the sanctuary of her mind, designing a pattern inspired by the intricate marbling of the steak he was so vehemently criticizing. She imagined the rhythmic clatter of the jacquard loom, the satisfying click-clack of the shuttles weaving thread into her dreams. The final blow landed with the dessert menus. "We'll take the tiramisu," Veronica said, then paused, her gaze raking Maya up and down with a cruel, calculating glint in her eyes. "And a new waitress. This one's depressing to look at." The insult, delivered with such casual cruelty, shattered Maya's carefully constructed professional armor. It wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever been belittled by those who wielded power. It was the accumulated weight of exhaustion, stress, spilled water, steak complaints, snapped fingers, all coalescing into a single unbearable point. Something inside Maya snapped. She stood up straight, placing the dessert menus precisely on the corner of the table. The smile vanished, replaced by a quiet, smoldering fire. The entire restaurant seemed to recede into the periphery. There was only table 7. "No," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it possessed a clarity that sliced through the dining room chatter like a shard of glass. Several nearby tables fell silent. Harrison Davenport looked up from his phone, annoyance flickering across his face. "No? What do you mean, no?" "I mean no," Maya repeated, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice remained steady. "You will not be getting a new waitress, and you will not be getting tiramisu. You will be getting the check." Veronica gasped, a sound of theatrical outrage. "How dare you?" Harrison leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you have any idea who I am?" And there it was, the classic, arrogant line that encapsulated all the injustice in the world. A strange, liberating calm washed over Maya. She had already lost. She was going to be fired. The Parsons Fund would remain a distant dream. But in that moment, she didn't care. She had her dignity. "Yes," Maya said, her voice ringing with clarity in the now silent restaurant. Every eye was on them. "I know exactly who you are. You're the man at table 7. You're the man who snaps his fingers because he thinks speaking is beneath him. You're the man who blames a server for a glass he knocked over. You're the man who wears a $50,000 watch but doesn't have the decency to say please or thank you." She took a breath, her gaze unwavering. You sit here in your expensive suit talking about your multi-million-dollar deals, and you treat the person serving you your food like she's nothing, less than nothing, a piece of inconvenient furniture. She turned her head slightly to include Veronica. And you think it's clever to mock someone for trying hard? That effort you find so depressing is what pays for my education. It's what keeps this city running while you sit here in your bubble of privilege, mistaking cruelty for personality. She looked back at Harrison, whose face was a thundercloud of disbelief and fury. He was speechless. For the first time all night, Harrison Davenport had no response. Maya leaned in just a fraction, lowering her voice so only their table could hear, but in the dead silence, it carried. So let me tell you who I am. I'm the person who has seen your true character tonight, and I'm telling you, all the money in the world can't buy you class. It hasn't bought you kindness, and it certainly hasn't bought you the right to treat another human being with such utter contempt. She straightened, her body thrumming with adrenaline. Your check will be at the host stand. I'd advise you to pay it and leave. My manager will be with you shortly to accept my resignation. With that, she turned on her heel and walked away from the table, her head held high. A wave of stunned silence followed her, broken only by the sound of her own steady footsteps on the marble floor. She didn't look back, heading directly for the employee locker room, ignoring the shocked faces of her colleagues and the apoplectic expression of Robert, who was already power-walking toward table 7. She grabbed her bag, her worn sketchbook tumbling to the floor. Scooping it up, her hands trembled as the adrenaline began to ebb, replaced by the cold, hard reality of her actions. She had just detonated her life. As she walked out the back door and into the cool, damp New York night, she took a deep, shuddering breath. For the first time in a long time, it felt like her own. Now she had to figure out what to do with it. She spent the next hour drafting an email. It was the most difficult thing she had ever written. She deleted and rewrote the first line 20 times. Finally, she settled on something direct and professional. Subject, your correspondence. Mr. Davenport, thank you for your letter and the enclosed card. Your apology is accepted. While I appreciate the sentiment behind your gesture, I cannot accept it as a gift. My education is my own responsibility. However, you use the word investment, and on that basis, I am willing to have a conversation. If you are serious about this, I propose we meet to discuss terms not as a benefactor and a recipient, but as two professionals entering into an agreement alone with a structured repayment plan to commence 1 year after my graduation with interest. I will not be bought and my forgiveness is not for sale, but my talent is for hire, and while I appreciate the sentiment behind your gesture, I cannot accept it as a gift. My education is my own responsibility. However, you use the word investment, and on that basis, I am willing to have a conversation. If you are serious about this, I propose we meet to discuss terms not as a benefactor and a recipient, but as two professionals entering into an agreement alone with a structured repayment plan to commence 1 year after my graduation with interest. I will not be bought and my forgiveness is not for sale, but my talent is for hire and my ambition is available for investment. If you agree to these conditions, I am available to meet this Friday, not at a restaurant on the Upper East Side, but at a coffee shop of my choosing in my neighborhood. Let me know your decision. Sincerely, Maya Kowalski. She hit send before she could lose her nerve, her heart hammering as if she'd just run a marathon. She had thrown the gauntlet back. She had reclaimed her power. Now the ball was in his court. The reply came in less than 10 minutes. Subject re your correspondence. Ms. Kowalski, your terms are more than acceptable. They are admirable. Friday. Name the place and time. HD. Maya stared at the email, a slow smile spreading across her face. This wasn't a surrender. This was a negotiation. The place she chose was the Daily Grind, a small, unpretentious coffee shop in Atoria with mismatched furniture and the best espresso in the borough. It was her territory. Here. She wasn't an employee. She was a local. She arrived 15 minutes early on Friday, choosing a small table in the corner that gave her a clear view of the door. At precisely 10:01 a.m., Harrison Davenport walked in. He was transformed. Gone was the severe, perfectly tailored suit. He wore dark jeans, a simple gray cashmere sweater, and a well-worn leather jacket. Without the armor of his corporate attire, he looked younger, less intimidating, and profoundly out of place. He scanned the room, his eyes still the color of a stormy sea, now holding a flicker of uncertainty. Their eyes met, and he gave a hesitant nod before walking over to her table. "Miss Kowalski," he said, his voice softer than she remembered. "My Mr. de Davenport," she replied, not standing. "Please sit." He slid into the chair opposite her, the small table suddenly feeling even smaller. An awkward silence hung between them, thick with the memory of their last encounter. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," he began. "And for your email, it was humbling. Honesty usually is." Maya said, her voice neutral. She gestured to the counter. "Can I get you a coffee?" It's not sassy Kaya, but the caffeine is effective. A faint smile touched his lips. "I'll get it. What would you like?" "Black coffee, please." When he returned with their drinks, he placed a black leather portfolio on the table between them. "I had my legal team draft a preliminary loan agreement based on your email," he said, pushing it toward her. "It outlines a principal amount to cover 4 years of tuition and living expenses with a standard interest rate repayment to begin 12 months post-graduation with a 10-year term. Of course, all clauses are negotiable." Maya was taken aback by his preparedness. She opened the portfolio. It was a formal, legally binding document. He had taken her seriously. He had respected her terms. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, looking up from the papers, her gaze sharp. "And the truth this time, not the lines from your letter." He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. He looked tired. "The letter was the truth," he said quietly. "But it wasn't the whole truth. That night, I was on the verge of losing the biggest deal of my career, a $700 million merger. I was angry. I was stressed. And I was taking it out on everyone around me. It's not an excuse, but it's the context." He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "But the real reason I'm here is this." He hesitated. "When you walked away, your sketchbook fell. It was open for just a second. I saw one of your designs." Maya's breath caught in her throat. "It was a pattern," he continued, his voice, full of a new energy, black and gold. "It looked like, I don't know, like shattered glass, but beautiful, symmetrical. I run a private equity firm, Maya. We invest in businesses. We specialize in identifying potential where others don't see it. My entire career is built on recognizing a single brilliant spark in a sea of mediocrity." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Your words that night showed me your character, but that 1-second glimpse of your sketchbook showed me your genius. This isn't charity. This is the best kind of investment I can make. The kind that isn't about numbers on a page, but about tangible, world-changing talent. I am doing this because I believe you will be a monumental success, and I want to be able to say I had a small part in it, and selfishly because I hope that one day when your company goes public, my firm gets to handle the IPO." Maya was stunned into silence. He hadn't just seen her anger. He'd seen her art. He'd seen the things she held most sacred, the part of her she thought was invisible to the world. The compliment coming from this man in this context was more powerful than any amount of money. She slowly closed the portfolio. "The interest rate is too low," she said, her voice firm again, though the ice within her had begun to thaw. "We'll set it at the prime rate plus 2%. I want this to be a profitable investment for you, Mr. Davenport." Harrison looked at her, a slow, genuine smile spreading across his face for the first time. It transformed him, chasing the shadows from his eyes. "Then we have a deal, Miss Kowalski." "We have a deal, Mr. Davenport." She confirmed a matching smile, finally reaching her own lips. She slid the black card out of her wallet and placed it on the table between them. "And as for this," she said, "I'll be keeping meticulous records. You'll get a quarterly report detailing every single expense, tuition, art supplies, rent, nothing else." "I wouldn't expect anything less," he said. They shook on it, his hand warm and firm around hers. It wasn't the end of a conflict, but the beginning of a complex and unexpected partnership. As Maya walked home, the city didn't feel mocking anymore. The sun broke through the clouds, and the streets of Queens felt like the runway to her future. She hadn't just gotten a loan. She had found an unlikely believer, And for the first time, the weight of the black card in her pocket didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a tool. September arrived with a crisp autumnal energy that mirrored Maya's own. Walking onto the Greenwich Village campus of Parsons School of Design felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. The air buzzed with creativity. The hallways a kaleidoscope of punk rock aesthetics, minimalist chic, and avant-garde experiments. These were her people. For the first time, she wasn't Maya the waitress. She was Maya Kowalski, a design student. She paid her tuition in full at the Brazier's office. The woman behind the counter didn't even blink as she ran the Centurion card. The transaction, which represented more money than Maya had ever seen in her life, was completed with a mundane anticlimactic beep. But for Maya, it was the sound of her dream starting. She threw herself into her studies with a ferocious dedication. Late nights were no longer spent scrubbing floors, but hunched over drafting tables, her hands stained with ink and dye instead of dishwater. She filled sketchbook after sketchbook, her mind exploding with ideas that had been dormant for years. Her professors quickly took notice, her unique perspective blending organic forms with harsh industrial geometry. A style forged in the contrast between her Queens neighborhood and the Manhattan skyline was fresh and compelling. As per their agreement, she sent Harrison a meticulously detailed expense report at the end of each month. It was an itemized list of every dollar spent, tuition installments, fabric swatches from mood-specialized Japanese inks, textbooks, her share of the rent. She kept it strictly professional. He would always reply with a simple received. Thank you, HD. But after the third report, his reply changed. Received. The report looks perfect. I was wondering if you might be open to having dinner sometime to discuss your progress. As an investor, I'm keen to hear about let's call it, the human return on my investment. Strictly business, of course. Maya hesitated. Their agreement was financial, but his logic was sound. An investor would want a progress report. She agreed, suggesting a casual bistro in the West Village. Neutral ground. That dinner changed everything. The strictly business pretense evaporated within the first 10 minutes. He asked about her classes, and his interest was genuine. He didn't just nod along. He asked insightful questions about her design philosophy, about the historical influences on her work, about the technical challenges of screen printing versus digital printing. He spoke of art and architecture with a surprising depth of knowledge. In turn, she found herself asking about his world. Not the ruthless deal-making, but the psychology of it. What did it feel like to build something from nothing? What was the art in a successful negotiation? She discovered a man far more complex than the caricature she had met at the restaurant. He was driven, yes, but also possessed a razor-sharp intellect and a dry, self-deprecating wit that she hadn't expected. That one dinner became a monthly occurrence. Then bi-weekly, they called them investor meetings, a shared joke that allowed them to navigate the strange, undefined space they occupied. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily from her projects to his, from art history to market trends, from their childhoods to their hopes for the future. Mia learned that Harrison wasn't old money. He was the son of a steelworker from Pittsburgh. He had clawed his way to the top on scholarships, ambition, and an inhuman capacity for work. His arrogance, she realized, wasn't the easy confidence of the inherited rich, but the brittle armor of someone terrified of sliding back down. He, in turn, was captivated by her. He was drawn to her passion, her unshakable integrity, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about creating something beautiful. She was the antithesis of the transactional, cynical world he inhabited. She was real. One chilly November evening, as they walked through Washington Square Park after one of their meetings, he stopped under the glow of a street lamp. "You know," he said, his voice quiet, "these are the best investments I've ever made." "My tuition fees?" she asked, a playful smile on her face. "No," he said, his gaze serious. "These hours with you." And in the quiet of the park, surrounded by the murmur of the city, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of power or possession, but one of tenderness and vulnerability. It was a question, and Maya answered by kissing him back the cold night air forgotten. Their relationship shifted from a professional arrangement to a deep personal connection. It was a slow burn built on a foundation of mutual respect and an undeniable chemistry. Harrison became her biggest cheerleader, attending her student showcases, his face in the crowd, radiating a quiet pride. Maya in turn became his confidant, the one person he could be vulnerable with, the one who reminded him of the man he wanted to be. But the world they inhabited was small, and secrets in the upper echelons of New York society have a short shelf life. The complication arrived, as it always does, in a slash of red and a cloud of expensive perfume. It was at a gallery opening in Chelsea that Harrison had invited her to. Maya, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress of her own design, felt a newfound confidence. She was holding her own, discussing postmodernism with a gallery owner when a familiar icy voice cut through the air. "Well, well, Harrison, I see you've taken up rescuing stray kittens. How philanthropic of you." Maya turned. Veronica Lancaster stood there, a champagne flute in her hand, her eyes sweeping over Mia with undisguised venom. She looked from Harrison's hand, which was resting on the small of Maya's back, to Mia's face. "I remember you," Veronica purred, a cruel smile playing on her lips. The little waitress with the big mouth. "I see you found a much more effective way to get what you want. Tell me, is he paying for the dress too, or is that part of the tuition package?" The insult was designed to pierce to reduce Maya back to the girl who served her tiramisu. But Maya was not that girl anymore. Before Harrison could unleash the thunder she saw gathering in his eyes, Maya stepped forward, a calm smile on her face. "Veronica, it's lovely to see you again," she said, her voice even and cool. "And yes, he is. It's all part of the investment. Harrison is a very shrewd businessman. He only invests in ventures with a high potential for return." She met Veronica's glare without flinching. "You of all people should know what it's like to be on the losing end of one of his deals." Veronica's face tightened, the jab at the failed LVMH merger hitting its mark. She shot a look of pure hatred at Mayer before turning on her heel and stalking away. Harrison looked at Mia, a mixture of fury and awe on his face. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice tight with anger at Veronica. "I shouldn't have exposed you to that," Harrison Mears said, touching his arm. "I'm not made of glass, and she's not wrong about one thing. You did invest in me, and I plan on making you look like a genius." But Veronica wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. She was a rival scorned both professionally and in her mind personally. She saw Mara not just as Harrison's new partner, but as a symbol of her own humiliation, and she began to plot. The sabotage was subtle at first. A rumor whispered at a cocktail party that Harrison Davenport was dating a charity case. A snide comment to a fashion journalist about the questionable origins of his new protégé. But Veronica was patient. She was waiting for the right moment to strike, not just to hurt Ma, but to destroy her credibility in the world she was just beginning to conquer. The opportunity came during Parsons' prestigious end-of-year runway show, where the best student designs were showcased to a panel of industry titans, editors from Vogue and WWD, buyers from Bergdorf Goodman, and designers from major fashion houses. It was Mia's chance to make her mark. Her final piece, a stunning evening gown featuring her signature shattered glass pattern, meticulously hand-beaded onto black silk, was the culmination of a year of tireless work. It was her masterpiece. 2 days before the show, a blog post appeared on a notorious fashion gossip site. The headline was "Explosive Parsons Prodigy or Prolific Plagiarist: The Unsettling Similarity Between an Up-and-Comer and a Fast Fashion Knockoff." The post featured 2 images side by side. On the left was a photograph of a cheap polyester dress being sold on a mass-market European retail website. The dress featured a crude, simplified version of Mears' unique shattered glass design. On the right was a photo of Mears' original design sketch, which had been leaked from inside the university. The implication was clear and devastating. Mia had either stolen her core design from a cheap online brand, or she had sold out her own design for a quick buck before her official debut. Her dream was turning into a public nightmare, and Veronica Lancaster's fingerprints were nowhere to be seen. Yet Mia knew with a sickening certainty that she was behind it all. The accusation hit Mia like a physical blow. The blog post, with its damning headline, "Parsons Prodigy or Prolific Plagiarist," felt designed to shatter her world. Staring at her soul-bearing sketch next to a cheap, crude copy, she felt the walls of her new life crumble. The online comments were a torrent of vitriol branding her a fraud. The dream had become a public nightmare. The fallout was swift and brutal. Her phone buzzed with a mixture of concerned and accusatory messages. The university, forced to protect its reputation, launched an honor code investigation. Her professor, Madame Dubois, regretfully informed her that her masterpiece, the culmination of a year's tireless work, was being pulled from the final runway showcase. When she finally called Harrison, her voice was a hollow whisper. As she explained the situation, a terrible silence stretched across the line from London. In that single dreadful second, a new fear eclipsed all others. What if he doubted her? Harrison, she breathed, her voice cracking. I'm booking a flight, he said, his tone a low, controlled rumble of fury. I'll be there in 7 hours. Don't talk to anyone. We're going to fight this. He didn't doubt her, but as she hung up, Maya knew she wouldn't just wait to be rescued. This was her name, her design, her fight. She channeled her fear into focused action, turning her small apartment into a war room. She was a designer. Her process was her proof. She unearthed every piece of her creative journey. The first charcoal thumbnail sketches from over a year ago, dated and stored in old books. The time-stamped Adobe Illustrator files on her laptop. The progression of photos on her phone documenting the gown's creation from dyeing the silk to sewing the final shimmering bead. It was an undeniable timeline of her work. When Harrison arrived haggarded from the transatlantic flight, but with eyes blazing, he found her not defeated, but armed with evidence. I was so afraid you'd doubt me, she admitted as he wrapped her in a fierce hug. Maya, he said, pulling back to look her in the eye, I invested in your character long before your career. Doubting you never crossed my mind. My only thought was, who do I have to destroy? For this, Veronica Lancaster Meir said, her voice turning to steel, but proving it is the problem. Leave that to me, Harrison said grimly. He set his own machine in motion, mobilizing a team of digital forensic experts and his formidable head of security, Michael. The instructions were simple. Find the link between Veronica, the fast fashion website, and the leak at Parsons. While Harrison's forces moved in the shadows, Mia stepped into the light. She requested a formal hearing with the Parsons Honor Code Committee and compiled her evidence into a flawless dossier of her innocence. She walked into the hearing room. Harrison, a silent pillar of support behind her, and laid out her case. She didn't just show them the final design. She walked them through its birth from the first pencil scratch to the last stitch. This design wasn't stolen, she concluded, her voice ringing with unshakable conviction. It was grown. The dress on that website is a cheap echo. My work is the original voice. The committee was visibly moved, the evidence overwhelming. As they began to deliberate, Harrison's phone vibrated. He glanced at an incoming email from Michael, his expression hardening into one of grim satisfaction. The proof had arrived. The web Veronica had woven was completely exposed. Michael had uncovered the financial trail. The fast fashion company was owned by a shell corporation recently funded by Veronica's investment firm. He had found the source of the leak, a disgruntled work-study student who confessed to being paid for access to the school's digital archives. The final nail in the coffin came from the forensics team who had traced the IP address of the anonymous tip to the gossip blog. It originated from a device in a Parisian hotel where Veronica had been staying the previous week. Harrison made one more call to the editor-in-chief of WWD, providing the irrefutable proof of the entire scheme. The following 24 hours saw a dramatic reversal. The Honor Code Committee issued a full public exoneration of Mia. The gossip blog, facing a massive lawsuit, printed a graveling retraction that exposed Veronica's plot. WWD ran a feature story not just on the sabotage, but on the incredible talent and resilience of the designer at its center. Veronica's world imploded. Her investors fled. Her reputation was destroyed, and she was left in the ruins of her own malice. But simple vindication wasn't enough. On the night of the Parsons showcase, Madame Dubois made an unprecedented announcement of a surprise final piece. The lights dimmed, a single spot hit the runway, and out walked a model wearing Meir's gown. A collective gasp swept through the audience. The shattered glass design was breathtaking. The hand-sewn beads caught the light shimmering like a constellation of stars, a testament to defiant beauty. As the model reached the end of the runway, Maya stepped out to a thunderous standing ovation. In the crowd, she found Harrison's face, and he was looking at her with an expression of such profound love and pride. It took her breath away. The show was a triumph. Mia was mobbed by editors and buyers, but one conversation stood out. A senior executive from Hermes, who had been on the judging panel, didn't just want her gown. He wanted to discuss a capsule collection. Months later, on a bright Soho morning, a small crowd gathered outside a new boutique. The sign above the door was simple, elegant script: Kowalski. Inside, Maya stood beside Harrison, her hand in his, looking at the space filled with her creations. It was the culmination of everything: the fight in the restaurant, the black card, the public battle. It had all led here. "You know," Harrison said, his voice quiet with emotion, that night at Valente, "it was the best deal I ever lost." Maya leaned her head on his shoulder, a radiant smile on her face as she looked at her name on the wall. "For me," she said, "it was the night I learned my own value." Her journey hadn't been a fairy tale. It had been a war she had won herself. The black card had opened a door, but her talent, her full and her unbreakable will had built the world on the other side. And that's where Maya's story leaves us for now. Not at an ending, but at a brilliant new beginning. Her journey shows us that true wealth isn't found in a bank account or on a titanium credit card. It's found in our spirit, in our integrity, and in the unshakable belief in our own talent. Maya Kowalski was never a victim. She was a warrior who just needed the right battlefield. Harrison Davenport learned that power without character is meaningless, and the best investment you can ever make is in another person's potential. Their story is a powerful reminder that one moment of courage can change everything. If this story of resilience, love, and redemption resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that their fight is worth it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that will inspire and move you. What did you think of Maya's final move? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for listening.